Hi, my name is James Shepard, and I'm really excited about this particular episode. I'm going to talk to you about sales psychology and ownership questions. Sales psychology and ownership questions. So one of the things I think is so interesting and kind of a little funny for me is when a new salesperson will contact me and they'll call me on the phone and say, James, I can't get any sales. And I'm like, well, tell me what's going on. And they start talking about all these logical things, Well, it's ridiculous. I offer this guy, $1,000 a year in savings and he still didn't sign up. I mean, obviously no one is interested if I can't even sell this person, as if there's some kind of really logical thing. So let me give you an example that I think will help you in your mind to understand what sales psychology is really all about and why people actually buy stuff. I want you to imagine you're walking down the street, okay? I was in Times Square last week in New York City. Imagine, you're there in Times Square, there's all these people around, and a total stranger walks up to you and says, hey, I actually want to give you $1,000. And so I'm going to send you the $1,000 to your bank account right now. All I need you to do here is I just need your bank account number, your routing number, and your social security number. And we're just going to put this in my phone here, and then I'm going to send you that $1,000. Now, how are you going to respond? I mean, think about that. Okay. Now imagine that he said $10,000. Now you're definitely going to do it, right? No, it doesn't matter if he said $1 million. This is a stranger. They're asking for your bank account information, your social security number. You'd have to be an idiot to do that, right? So why? Because you don't trust them. You don't like them. I don't know who you are, right? So it's not about the dollar amount. In fact, in many cases, the dollar amount being higher can actually put them off a little bit. One thing I think is so hilarious when I go out with new salespeople, they're always like giving away the farm. Like, how can I, it's like, oh, I can't sell this because I'm only saving them $30 a month. If I could only save them $60, then I could get the sale. Like, no, you can't. It has nothing to do with that. In fact, you're actually probably hurting the sale by trying to save them more money. It's crazy. Like, that's not how you make sales. The way you make sales is actually by minimizing it. And so, like I'll tell somebody and say, hey, here's the deal. I know you realize this. You're a small business. I'm a small business. I'm competing with all these big competitors. Now, here's the thing. Okay, I have good news. Okay, probably not the news you wanted to hear. It's not great, but here's what I was able to do. I was able to match the price your current company is offering you, and I'm just being honest. That's what I can do. But the good news is you get to go with a local vendor, and I think that really means something to support the local small business community. I'm sure you agree with me, don't you, Mr. Jones? That's a great pitch. You know why? Because they're like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, that's not too good to be true. Whereas another sales rep would come in and make no money on the deal because they're like, I can save you $1,000 a year. And that was like all the margin. And the person thinks they're just trying to scam me and they don't get the sale. So it's sales psychology really matters. So how do we get people to trust us and like us and kind of move towards a sale? Well, I want to talk to you about a strategy from Tom Hopkins called ownership questions. And I've been rereading some of his materials. I've read it so many times. If you're not familiar with him, you should definitely check out his book, Mastering the Art of Selling. It's really, really good. One of my favorite sales books. So Tom Hopkins used to sell real estate, and he holds the record. I think he still holds the record for the most individual real estate properties that are sold in 1 year. It was over 400, I believe. So this is like more than one house a day that he sold. Most real estate agents sell one house a month. Yeah, literally. They make like $6,000 in commission or so on average. So to sell one a day is a lot. So anyway, he had the strategy called ownership questions. And the way he would use it is when he would be walking somebody around a house and he was trying to sell the house to them, what he would do is he would say stuff to them like, now, Susan, one of the questions I have is I'm looking at the house. I see it's this brownish color. Do you like that? Or if you moved in, do you think that you would end up changing the color of the house? And so then what happens is Susan looks at the house and says, oh boy, that really would look nice with a different, shade of blue or, something. Well, what's happening? Well, what's happening is in Susan's mind, she's buying this house and she's starting to imagine how it look. And then he walks in the back and says, oh, there's I like how they have that swing set in the back there with that patio. Would you change any of the landscaping around that? Or do you like the way that that's set up? And, and then her husband is, oh boy, I think I'd put some stones around there. Well, what are they doing? They're buying the house. They're getting into the house already in their mind. And so that's helping to move this process along so that it's them wanting to buy it rather than him trying to talk them into buying it, okay? So you can use ownership questions in anything that you're selling. If you're selling merchant services, you can talk to them about it and say, Let me ask you a question, Susan. If we were to move forward with this program, what are your thoughts on these different options that I have available to you? You know, we're talking about, Clover as like more of a high-end point of sale system that's really going to manage your whole business, or the Point Terminal, which is a nice smart terminal, smaller, sits on your countertop, or we can even have the free terminal option, which is like you have now, this terminal here, and replace it. What are your thoughts on those options if you did decide to move forward? That's a great ownership question. What happens is Susan's going to start talking about this and saying, well, I don't know if we really need Clover. That seems like a little bit of overkill for our level that we're at right now. The Point Terminal sounds interesting, but I don't know, like, what are the costs? And what will happen is ownership questions that you ask them are going to turn into something called buyer signs. Buyer signs are when your prospect starts asking you specific questions about the offer. When you hear somebody asking you about pricing or another question, that's a good thing. That's a buyer sign. That means they're at least interested enough that they're looking into this decision. So then you can respond with, again, ownership question. Well, actually, it's interesting you bring that up, Susan. We have several different options. Now, of course, you could just buy the terminal outright, which costs, whatever it is. In your case, say $1,000, so it's $995, and you could just buy the terminal outright. Or we do have a great leasing option or rental program that would be, $49 a month, or whatever it is, right? So, you can go to these options and then say to her again, now, it sounds like the Point Terminal is kind of the way you're leaning. Let's say we did end up going with that. Which one of those options would you be most interested in so I could get you more information on that? So you see, that's a great ownership question. Now, again, she's going, well, okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I think probably that monthly, that leasing option would be best, because then after 36 months, it's up and then we own the terminal, So you get the idea. And so anything you're selling, you can use these ownership questions, and it's going to get them thinking about already owning the service. So two really big tips I wanted to give you today. Number one, stop griping about why people are not buying from you because they should, because it just makes sense. Because sales is not about making sense. Sales is about you convincing people to buy stuff. So again, if sales is a purely logical decision, you're in trouble, because you're going to be out of a job really, really quickly, because they can do that on the internet. They can go online now and find stuff and decide if it's a good price or not, right? So what do we need you for? Salespeople are about convincing and the emotional responses and helping people get to a good place to make a good decision, but you're a salesperson, which means you have to sell people. So stop thinking that sales is all this cold, logical thing. It's not. It's emotional. That's why people buy, because of their emotions, and then you give them the justification for that with your value proposition. And then secondly, use ownership questions. Think about what you're trying to sell and go, how can I make ownership questions? Rewind this, listen to the ownership questions I used, and look at the wording and figure out how you can make that work for what you're selling. My name is James Shepard. Thank you for watching.